Alright, got another DIY slideshow how-to video here for you. This is the 2001 Toyota 4Runner, third generation, anywhere from 96, I think, to 2002. These vehicles have a rollover valve in the top of the gas tank, and they're made of plastic, and what happens with heat and time is that they crack, leading to an evap system leak, which throws a check engine light. The only way to fix it is to replace the valve, and the only way to do that the correct way, or I guess the factory way, would be to drop the gas tank. I didn't really want to do that. Figured I might need to do it again in the future, so I decided to cut a hole in the floorboard. This is the rear seat behind the driver. Bottom left, you can see the factory access port for the electronics for the fuel pump, so you can disconnect the wiring if you are going to drop the tank. I pulled that off so I could put a rag under there and cover up the valve and whatnot while I was drilling and nibbling away with an air tool. I used an air tool nibbler once I drilled a hole to cut a shape out that kind of approximates the valve. This stuff on the right is a sound deadening material. It's kind of like an asphalt tar based goop. You got to scrape it off so that you can push the air nibbler past it. The floorboard's got some pattern stamped into it for rigidity. Air nibbler will go right past that as long as you use a little bit of effort to push up and down those ridges. Didn't take too long to do this, maybe a handful of minutes with the air nibbler. You can see the valve there in the center. There's two hoses connected to it. Here's a close-up. This is the new valve I already put in. Hose on the right you can easily push off with a pair of needle nose. On the left, the hose has a couple of little barbs that you got to delicately push away and use a needle nose, tiny little needle nose, or a pair of little flathead screwdrivers, or a couple pick tools. Definitely be more delicate with that one. There's some little plastic tabs that you could snap there. Once you get those two hoses off, this rollover valve is about 4 or 5 inches long. It needs to pull straight up out of the tank. It's a compression fitting with a rubber gasket. However you can grab it, I kind of just used like two hook tools on the bottom lip of the valve and just pulled up directly on the valve, kind of wiggled it out. Once you get it above the sheet metal floorboard, you can grab it with your hands and pull it out the rest of the way. Pull the old gasket out, that'll probably be cracked. The new valve comes with a gasket. I put the gasket into the tank, and then I poured some 90% isopropyl alcohol onto the plastic part of the bottom part of the valve so that it would slide in nicely. Worked really well. Push it all the way down until it hits the gasket. Just, compression fit. Push it till it stops. I did use a compressor nozzle, air nozzle, to blow off all the debris before I started disconnecting everything and pulling the valve out. That way you're not going to end up with any debris or whatnot in your gas tank. I did it when my gas tank was probably almost empty. Check the gas warning light was on. This is my solution to seal up the hole that I cut. This is something called the Right Stuff gasket maker. I had some left over from doing my water pump job. I spread it all over the edge of the cut metal, pushing it out onto the bottom of the sheet metal as well for corrosion resistance, cover up all the bare metal. And then I laid a couple large beads. It kind of just squirts out under its own pressure from the can. I cut a piece of sheet metal here, bent it up so that it kind of fit along the contours of the floorboard. On the bottom of this sheet metal piece, I used a flap disc to grind off all the rust, and then using a rubber glove, I coated the entire bottom of this sheet with a thin coating of the gasket material for corrosion resistance. Pushed it down onto that large bead of gasket maker, spread all the stuff that squirted out along the edges, made sure it was all sealed up, and then I put a brick on top of this to let it cure up. Put the cover back onto that hole that's already there to let you pull the electronics off if you wanted to do that for the fuel pump. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This way in the future, if I have to replace that valve, I can just tear this sheet metal plate off, cut off all the gasket material, replace the valve, and then glue it back on.